Welcome back to XRP Insider, your trusted source for the biggest XRP news, Ripple updates, and crypto market moves shaping the future of digital finance. Today we have a massive update for the XRP community because the market is starting to heat up again. Institutions are stepping deeper into the space, and many analysts believe Ripple could be entering one of the most important phases in its history. Right now, XRP is trading around the $1.41 to $1.42 range, and despite recent volatility across the crypto market, XRP continues showing impressive resilience near a major breakout zone. Investors are watching closely because the chart structure that has been forming over the last few months is beginning to look extremely similar to previous accumulation periods before major rallies. While Bitcoin and Ethereum continue dominating headlines, XRP is quietly building momentum behind the scenes, and the combination of regulatory clarity, institutional adoption, ETF inflows, and banking integration is creating serious excitement across the crypto world. Today we're breaking down everything happening with Ripple, including the shocking UBS exposure filing, JPMorgan and MasterCard integration rumors, whale accumulation, ETF growth, legal clarity, and where analysts believe XRP could be heading next. One of the biggest stories driving attention toward XRP right now is the recent institutional exposure disclosure connected to UBS. Reports circulating across the market suggest that XRP experienced a strong price reaction after the global banking giant revealed exposure to Ripple-related products in a recent SEC filing. Now, whether you're bullish or cautious on XRP, there's no denying how important this development could become over time. Large institutional banks do not casually move into digital asset exposure without extensive internal analysis, legal review, and long-term strategic planning. This is why many investors see the UBS development as more than just another crypto headline. They believe it reflects a larger shift happening behind closed doors in the banking industry, where institutions are increasingly exploring blockchain infrastructure and tokenized finance solutions. XRP supporters argue that Ripple's focus on cross-border settlement, liquidity efficiency, and compliance is positioning the company directly in line with what major banks actually need. The market reacted strongly because institutional confidence often changes investor psychology very quickly, especially when it comes from globally recognized financial players that traditionally avoided crypto exposure in the past. At the same time, the XRP community has been buzzing over reports involving MasterCard. According to market discussions, Ripple may have completed a historic settlement process on the XRP ledger that integrates XRPL into live institutional banking systems connected to tokenized treasury operations. If these developments continue expanding, it could represent one of the biggest real-world utility moments in XRP's entire history. For years, critics claimed XRP lacked meaningful adoption, but supporters now argue the opposite may be unfolding in real time. The idea of banks using blockchain-powered settlement infrastructure for cross-border payments and treasury movement has always been one of Ripple's main goals. Now the market is starting to wonder whether those long-term ambitions are finally becoming reality. Even though some details are still developing, traders are paying close attention because institutional adoption narratives can dramatically reshape price expectations. The possibility that Ripple's technology is being connected to established banking systems has reignited bullish sentiment, and many investors believe this could only be the beginning of a much larger institutional rollout in the years ahead. Another major signal attracting attention comes from whale accumulation activity. According to recent market tracking data, wallets holding more than 1 million XRP accumulated over 1.2 billion XRP tokens during the first quarter of 2026. That is a massive number, and it's one of the reasons many traders believe smart money continues positioning aggressively despite periods of price suppression and market uncertainty. Whale behavior often becomes an important indicator because large investors usually operate with longer time horizons and deeper market research. When major wallets continue accumulating during consolidation periods instead of selling, retail traders often interpret it as a sign of growing confidence behind the scenes. This accumulation phase has happened while XRP traded within a relatively controlled range, which is why many analysts describe the current structure as a coiling pattern before a potentially explosive move. Of course, nothing in crypto is guaranteed, but historically, periods of heavy accumulation followed by tightening price action have often preceded significant volatility. The fact that whales are continuing to add exposure while the market waits for further legal clarity and institutional expansion is becoming one of the strongest bullish arguments circulating in the XRP community right now. The ETF narrative is another critical factor pushing optimism higher across the XRP market. Since XRP received commodity classification earlier this year, investor confidence surrounding institutional products has accelerated significantly. Spot XRP ETF inflows are now estimated to have reached approximately $1.44 billion cumulatively, which is an enormous milestone for the asset class. Many investors remember how Bitcoin ETFs completely changed market dynamics for institutional participation, and now traders are asking whether XRP could experience a similar momentum wave over time. ETFs matter because they provide easier access for institutional and traditional investors who may not want to directly manage crypto wallets or exchange custody. The easier it becomes for large capital to enter XRP exposure, the stronger the long-term liquidity and adoption narrative becomes. Analysts believe ETF growth could continue playing a major role throughout 2026, especially if regulatory conditions remain favorable. The market is watching closely because consistent inflows can create sustained buying pressure, while also improving legitimacy in the eyes of traditional finance. Right now, many XRP holders see the ETF momentum as proof that institutional appetite for regulated digital asset exposure is continuing to grow faster than many expected. Of course, one of the biggest reasons the XRP market has regained confidence this year comes from the conclusion of the long-running SEC lawsuit involving Ripple Labs and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. For years, the legal battle created uncertainty that weighed heavily on XRP's market performance and institutional expansion. Many exchanges limited trading activity, and institutional investors stayed cautious while waiting for regulatory direction. Now that the legal battle has officially ended, the mood surrounding XRP has changed dramatically. Traders who spent years waiting for clarity believe Ripple can finally move forward without the constant pressure of legal uncertainty hanging over the project. This development has also increased confidence among investors who previously avoided XRP due to regulatory concerns. While the broader crypto industry still faces evolving regulation, XRP supporters argue Ripple now has one of the clearest legal positions among major digital assets in the United States. That clarity is becoming one of the strongest narratives driving renewed interest, especially among investors looking for projects that can survive and operate within regulated financial environments over the long term. The market is also paying extremely close attention to the proposed Clarity Act, because many analysts believe it could become one of the most important pieces of crypto legislation in recent years. The bill is expected to provide a more definitive legal framework for digital assets and could help establish clearer distinctions between securities, commodities, and blockchain-based financial products. For the XRP community, this matters enormously because legal uncertainty has historically been one of the largest barriers preventing institutional adoption. Investors want clear rules before committing massive capital, and companies want confidence that innovation can continue without unexpected enforcement actions. If the Clarity Act moves forward successfully this summer, many analysts believe it could unlock a new wave of institutional participation across the crypto industry. XRP supporters are especially optimistic because Ripple's focus on compliance and institutional infrastructure may position the company favorably under future regulations. Markets hate uncertainty, and clearer rules often attract more investment. That's why traders are watching every update connected to the legislation. The outcome could influence not only XRP's price direction, but also the broader pace of crypto adoption across traditional finance systems in the United States and globally. Another huge milestone that many investors are discussing right now involves Ripple's banking expansion. Reports indicate that Ripple received conditional approval for a U.S. National Trust Bank charter from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in late 2025. And the system reportedly became fully operational in April 2026. If this transition continues successfully, it could represent a transformative moment for Ripple's role within regulated financial infrastructure. The ability to offer digital asset custody services inside the regulated U.S. banking framework changes the conversation entirely because it moves Ripple beyond being viewed as just another crypto company. Instead, it positions Ripple closer to a regulated financial institution operating within official banking structures. This could open doors for institutional partnerships, enterprise-level custody services, tokenized asset management, and broader integration into financial systems that previously avoided direct blockchain exposure. Investors see this as a major credibility boost because regulated custody solutions are becoming increasingly important as institutions move deeper into digital assets. The combination of banking approval, legal clarity, and ETF growth is creating a narrative that Ripple is evolving from a crypto startup into a legitimate long-term financial infrastructure player. Now let's talk about the chart itself because technical analysts are becoming increasingly focused on XRP's current consolidation structure. XRP has been coiling for nearly 3 months, and many traders believe the market is approaching a decisive breakout moment. According to several analysts, a strong daily close above the critical $1.50 resistance zone could potentially trigger a rally toward the $1.70 level relatively quickly. The reason this level matters so much is because it represents a psychological and technical barrier that traders have been monitoring for weeks. Once major resistance breaks with strong volume, momentum traders often enter aggressively, creating rapid upside movement. Right now, XRP continues holding support surprisingly well, despite broader market uncertainty. And that resilience is one reason optimism continues building. Analysts describe the current structure as compressed energy waiting for direction. If bullish catalysts continue stacking together through ETF inflows, institutional integration, and positive regulatory developments, traders believe XRP could finally escape the prolonged consolidation phase that frustrated holders for months. Still, experienced investors understand that crypto remains volatile, and confirmation matters more than speculation when it comes to breakout trading strategies. Short-term analyst targets for May 2026 remain relatively conservative but still optimistic overall. Most market forecasts currently place XRP within a projected range between $1.40 and $1.60 throughout the month, depending on market momentum and broader crypto conditions. While some traders expected faster, explosive growth after the SEC case concluded, others argue the slower consolidation phase may actually be healthier for long-term sustainability. Rapid parabolic moves can attract short-term speculation, but steady accumulation and institutional positioning often build stronger foundations over time. This is why many long-term XRP supporters remain patient, despite temporary price stagnation. They believe the current environment is establishing structural support before larger institutional participation accelerates later in the year. Analysts also point out that XRP has historically experienced sharp price expansion after extended consolidation periods, which keeps speculative excitement alive among traders. The key factor now will likely be whether institutional adoption headlines continue increasing, and whether the broader crypto market maintains bullish momentum through the summer. If those conditions align together, many traders believe XRP could begin outperforming expectations much sooner than most skeptics anticipate right now. Looking toward the end of 2026, bullish price projections for XRP vary dramatically, but some forecasts are extremely ambitious. Certain analysts believe XRP could potentially reach anywhere between $2.80 and even $8 under highly favorable conditions. Now, obviously, those projections depend on several major assumptions becoming reality. Continued ETF inflows would need to remain strong, institutional banking adoption would need to expand successfully, and the Clarity Act or similar legislation would need to create supportive regulatory conditions. In other words, the bullish case depends heavily on execution and macro market momentum. However, XRP supporters argue that the project is finally entering the exact environment it was originally built for. Ripple has consistently focused on compliance, institutional infrastructure, and payment efficiency, while many other crypto projects concentrated mainly on speculation. If traditional finance truly embraces tokenized settlements and blockchain-powered liquidity solutions over the coming years, XRP believers think Ripple may become one of the biggest beneficiaries in the entire industry. Whether those massive targets eventually happen or not, there's no question that investor expectations surrounding XRP have changed significantly compared to previous years. At the same time, cautious investors continue reminding the community that risks still exist. Crypto markets remain highly volatile, and sentiment can change extremely quickly based on macroeconomic conditions, regulation, or unexpected market events. Even though Ripple achieved important legal victories and institutional progress, competition within the blockchain and payments sector remains intense. Projects focused on stablecoins, tokenized finance, and cross-border settlements are all competing for market share. In addition, global economic uncertainty and interest rate conditions could still impact investor appetite for risk assets, including crypto. That's why experienced traders emphasize risk management even during bullish market cycles. XRP's current structure looks promising to many analysts, but confirmation always matters more than hype. Breakout levels, trading volume, institutional partnerships, and legal developments will continue playing major roles in determining whether XRP can maintain upward momentum through the rest of 2026. Smart investors understand that long-term success requires patience, discipline, and realistic expectations rather than emotional reactions to short-term price fluctuations or social media excitement. What makes the current XRP story especially interesting is how dramatically the narrative has shifted compared to previous years. There was a time when many investors believed Ripple's legal problems would permanently limit XRP's growth potential. Critics questioned whether institutions would ever seriously adopt the technology, and some traders completely wrote off the project during periods of uncertainty. But now, the conversation feels very different. Institutional exposure reports, ETF growth, banking approvals, whale accumulation, and legal clarity are all creating an entirely new market perception. Whether someone is bullish or bearish on XRP, it's becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the scale of developments unfolding around Ripple in 2026. This is exactly why XRP continues dominating conversations across crypto communities, financial media, and institutional discussions. Investors are no longer asking whether Ripple survived the SEC battle. Instead, many are now asking how large Ripple's role in future financial infrastructure could eventually become if adoption continues accelerating over the next several years. Social sentiment surrounding XRP has also intensified significantly over the past few weeks. Across crypto communities, traders are debating whether this consolidation period represents the final accumulation phase before a major breakout cycle begins. Some investors believe institutional money is quietly positioning, while retail attention remains focused elsewhere. Others argue that the real catalyst could arrive once broader regulatory clarity fully unlocks large-scale banking integration and tokenized asset settlement. Either way, excitement is clearly building. Search trends, community engagement, and trading discussions have all increased as XRP approaches critical technical levels. Many long-term holders who stayed patient throughout the SEC battle now feel vindicated watching institutional interest grow. At the same time, new investors entering the market are beginning to study Ripple's role in cross-border finance more seriously. This combination of renewed retail excitement and growing institutional credibility is helping fuel the momentum narrative surrounding XRP right now, and traders are watching closely to see whether that momentum eventually translates into a sustained breakout above key resistance levels. One thing that stands out about Ripple compared to many crypto projects is the company's long-term focus on real-world financial infrastructure rather than short-term hype cycles. Ripple consistently positioned itself around cross-border payments, liquidity efficiency, enterprise adoption, and regulatory compliance long before those themes became mainstream in crypto. Now that governments and financial institutions are taking blockchain technology more seriously, some investors believe Ripple's strategy may finally be paying off in a major way. The integration discussions involving large banks and payment providers are especially important because they support the argument that XRP's utility narrative could eventually extend far beyond speculation alone. If Ripple continues building partnerships within regulated finance systems, the long-term implications for XRP adoption could become extremely significant. This is why many analysts describe 2026 as a potentially defining year for Ripple's future. The foundation appears stronger than it has in years, and the combination of legal clarity, institutional exposure, and banking expansion is creating one of the most closely watched stories in the entire crypto industry today. As we move deeper into the second half of 2026, investors will continue monitoring several critical factors that could shape XRP's next major move. ETF inflow trends, progress surrounding the Clarity Act, additional institutional partnership announcements, whale accumulation patterns, and broader crypto market sentiment will all remain essential indicators. Traders also want confirmation that Ripple's banking infrastructure expansion can scale effectively within regulated systems. If these catalysts continue aligning positively, bullish momentum could strengthen considerably. However, if macroeconomic pressure increases or adoption slows unexpectedly, volatility could remain elevated. This is why many analysts continue emphasizing patience and strategic positioning rather than emotional trading. The XRP market is entering a phase where fundamentals, regulation, and institutional activity matter more than ever before. That shift alone represents a major evolution compared to earlier crypto cycles, dominated mostly by speculation and hype. Whether XRP ultimately reaches conservative targets or the more aggressive bullish projections, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. Ripple is no longer being viewed as just another crypto company. It is increasingly being discussed as a serious player within the future of global digital finance. So right now, XRP sits at one of the most important crossroads in its history. Trading near the $41 to $42 range, supported by whale accumulation, institutional momentum, ETF growth, banking expansion, and legal clarity, the market is watching closely for signs of the next breakout phase. The coming months could determine whether XRP finally transitions from a controversial crypto asset into a fully integrated component of institutional financial infrastructure. Some investors remain skeptical, while others believe Ripple is positioned for one of the biggest long-term growth stories in digital assets. No matter which side of the debate you're on, there's no denying that 2026 is shaping up to be a defining year for XRP and the broader Ripple ecosystem. Stay locked in because the next few weeks could become extremely important for the future direction of the market. Thanks for watching XRP Insider, and we'll continue bringing you the latest XRP news, institutional developments, market analysis, and crypto updates as this story continues unfolding.